Hi, everyone. I have a quick hit for you on an unexpected news item today. A quick hit is a quick report. And today we're going to focus on the passing of the Pope, Pope Francis. I'm Jenna, and this is Smarter News. And this is what we're here for, taking a breaking news headline, taking a breath, and delivering to you what's going on and why it matters. It seems obvious that the passing of the Pope will make global headlines. But why? Why does the death of the Pope really matter? Why does the leadership of the Catholic Church really matter? Part of the reason is the sheer reach of the Catholic Church. Christianity is one of the world's major religions. There are more Christians than any other faith in the world by sheer numbers, according to the latest available research. And Catholicism is one of the many branches under the canopy of Christianity. And it's a large branch. We're going to take a look at our country, the United States. 1 in 5 people in the United States identify as Catholic. That's roughly 20% of the US population. That's around 50 plus million Americans. According to Pew Research, that number used to be closer to 24% of all Americans. So currently we're 1 in 5. It used to be 1 in 4. And so that shows a decline, doesn't it? But we have to compare data to recent reporting because data is backwards looking and reporting can often give us a more accurate picture of reality and look forward. The New York Post just ran this article around Easter weekend. Young people are converting to Catholicism in mass, driven by pandemic, internet lacks alternatives. The New York Times released an article, The Face of Catholicism in the United States Has Changed. Here's how. And basically, it goes through a list of reasons why the declining number of Catholics in America may have stabilized. The article cited much of this new Pew research that I will include for you in show notes. I happened to be looking at it earlier today. And one interesting point really stood out to me. Catholics are spread really evenly across the United States, meaning there's not like a pocket of Catholics in a certain region in America. If you look across the country, you have 29% of Catholics living in the South, 26% living in the Northeast, 25% in the West, and 20% in the Midwest. So, really evenly represented no matter what region you're in. According to that recent survey, nearly 80% of American Catholics had a favorable view of Pope Francis. So that gives us a snapshot of America, but let's go bigger. About 1.4 billion people in the world identify as Catholic. That's roughly 17% of the world population. The Pope sits at the head of the Catholic Church. Where does the word Pope even come from, by the way? The Greek word papos. One of the first references of the word Pope, according to the National Catholic Registry, is a reference to the Bishop of Rome. The modern day Pope serves as the Bishop of Rome and the head of the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church's governing body operates from the Vatican. The Vatican in Rome is the world's smallest independent country. So, bottom line, the head of the Catholic Church impacts a lot of people, has the potential to, not just in America, but worldwide. And the Pope's passing is the passing not only of a leader of faith, of a church, but also a head of state because of the unique position of the Vatican. So it's a very unique story that we're looking at right now. And several facts make this particular Pope, Pope Francis, also very unique. He was the first Pope in more than 1,000 years to come from outside of Europe. He's the first Pope to be born in the Americas, in the Southern Hemisphere. He was born and raised in Argentina. His name, his birth name, Jorge Mario Bergoglio. Apparently, true to his Argentinian roots, he liked to tango. And I don't mean that symbolically. I mean, he actually liked to dance. He had an unusual path to the Vatican. He worked as a high school teacher, for example. He also worked as a nightclub bouncer before becoming a priest. Can you imagine? He chose the name Francis as his name for the papacy because he wanted the Catholic Church to really focus on the poor. And he tried to reflect that in a few ways in how he led. He opted for a Fiat over a fancy limo to travel in. He lived in a guest house at the Vatican, a smaller apartment. He also was the first pope to address a joint session of Congress, which he did back in 2015. There will be much said about his perspective on social issues. I'm going to leave that for other articles and reports to describe. What I really want to focus right now is on the future and what's next as we understand the importance of this particular figure. Because you may see this transition only a few times in your lifetime. Right now, the focus will remain on the funeral for Pope Francis. He requested, by the way, to be buried someplace other than St. Peter's. That's the large church in the Vatican that you often see in the pictures. He wants to be buried in a basilica, St. Mary Major Basilica. He would not be the first pope to be buried in this church that's also in Rome. but it does break with recent tradition. So we're going to watch to see how that takes place. But this should happen in the next several days as the Catholic Church is in this period of mourning. And then we're going to turn to this period of transition. And that's the conclave that you've likely heard a lot about. So 15 to 20 days after the death of a pope, the conclave gathers and typically begins. The conclave is made up of a group of cardinals. Now, there are 252 cardinals in the Catholic Church presently, but not all of them are going to be part of the conclave. We know age is a factor. We don't really know what else. So, according to some reports, it might take a little while to sift through this, by the way. According to some reports I saw, there's 135 cardinals that are under the age of 80. So, there's an age cutoff. In order to be part of the conclave to select the next pope, you're supposed to be younger than 80. Well, there's some cardinals that are older than 80. They don't get to be part of the conclave. But according to some of the data that we have, there's 135 cardinals that qualify, but only 120 are supposed to select the new pope. So who gets to be part of that 120? How that works out, we don't really know. And that actually exemplifies a bigger point here. There's a lot of this process that's very secretive, and it's purposely secretive. It's not like there's a journalist sitting there taking notes through this whole thing. We know some of what we know just based on what the Vatican is telling us, but a lot happens behind closed doors. A lot of it happens behind closed doors. In fact, locked doors of the Sistine Chapel where this conclave meets and where the vote takes place. And there's a communication blackout. So again, we have some insight, but not all. Now, the cardinals don't have to sleep inside the Sistine Chapel. They stay in basically a boarding house nearby. It's the same place that Pope Francis decided to live instead of a grander setting. And it's been described as sort of like a 3-star hotel, like pretty nice, but not so nice that you don't want to leave and go back to your own bed. Because the point is that they have to get through this vote. They need to figure out who the new Pope is going to be. And they have 4 opportunities to vote a day. You only need a simple 2/3 majority to elect a new Pope. And here's how we know what's going on. After each round of voting, the ballots are burned. Smoke is going to come out of the top of the Sistine Chapel. There's a special place that these votes are burned, and there's special ingredients that are going to be added in order to get a color for the smoke. If the smoke is white, we have a new pope. So all the cameras of the world are going to be on this view of the top of the Sistine Chapel. If the smoke is white, we have a new pope. If the smoke is black, we have no pope. Now, there are a ton of rules here if no pope is selected within several days. There's a series of triggers that can happen, from a break where cardinals can basically not meet in the conclave official setting for a day and have these sort of casual conversations amongst themselves. There's also a period that could look like a runoff, for example. But most conclaves, according to one expert, Bride Jensen, who runs Pontifex podcast, lasts about 4 days, according to his research. Pope Francis was selected on the second day. It is true that any Catholic man can be pope. So if you know one, you can send them a text and tell them that they could be the next pope. But typically that doesn't happen. In the last several hundred years, the pope has been a cardinal. A cardinal is a bishop, a priest selected by the pope as basically a senior advisor for the Catholic Church and also for the pope himself. And the reason why I say that we may only see this a few times in our lifetime is because a pope can serve until they pass away. In the case of Pope Francis, that was 12 years. The longest serving pope, according to the church, was the first one, St. Peter. He served more than 30 years as the head of the Catholic Church. Pope John Paul II, a well known pope in modern times, served 26 years. And we could have, by the way, another Pope Peter or Pope John or Pope Francis. Names can be repeated. It's up to whoever is selected. So we're going to work through some of these details as they happen and make sure that we give you the play-by-play as it takes place. But hopefully this declutters some of the news coming at you with all the different procedures and processes that are going to take place over the next several weeks. These are the big ones, the big highlights, just to be aware of. So a funeral for the Pope in the next several days, and the selection of the next pope probably between 15 and 30 days. We can estimate around that time period from the death of the pope, so over the next several weeks. I want to leave you though with a smarter fact that you can sort of keep it in the back of your mind as you're watching these traditions. There's one Italian family responsible for the clothes the pope will wear. Gamarelli's tailoring shop in Rome has been operating since the late 1700s. For 6 generations, they have made the garments worn by many members of the clergy. You will see, by the way, on television. There's some off the rack items, but they specifically, the Gamarellis, serve the Pope and tailor garments specifically for the many popes that have served over the last 100 plus years, again, since the late 1700s. By the way, you can actually shop from the Gamarelli website. I saw that you can order things like baby socks from them. I'm going to include a link. I know that's sort of an interesting fact to end on, but I thought it would create some balance. As we're talking about the passing of one life, we can also speak about new birth. So we'd start with the passing of a pope. I'm going to end you with a little bit of a news nugget on baby socks. And that tends to be the way that funerals work, doesn't it? That you have the end of one chapter happening at the same time of a beginning of another. And that's the process. It's the cycle of life that we end up watching together in our own lives, but also in the news. So I hope you found this whole conversation helpful. Again, the big highlights for what to know over the next several days and several weeks. I will also include some of these helpful links in the show notes in case you would like to peruse more. In the meantime, thank you for your support of quick, concise, nonpartisan, smarter news. I'm Jenna, and I'll see you back tomorrow with the scoop.